I'm Anthony Wright, and I am your host today with my co-host.
Adam Dietz, welcome.
And Adam is, we are co-hosts on the show that's called The Living Conversation, and we'd like to welcome you. And we have guests today from the Sonoma State University Philosophy Club. And welcome Colette and Andrew and Peter. So, Colette, you were saying before we got started that you had a topic you wanted to talk about. And what exactly did you want to talk about today, please?
Yeah, so the last philosophy club meeting, we were discussing whether suffering was essential to living a good life or not, which is kind of an interesting conversation.
So, what do you think, Adam?
With me, I think that we come from a very strong background of Chinese philosophy, and in Chinese philosophy, suffering is when something is out of harmony. So the principle of life is should be in harmony, and there's a natural state is harmony. So when someone gets sick or when someone's suffering, it's something that's out of harmony.
Oh, okay.
So to think that suffering, the short answer would be in Chinese philosophy, is suffering necessary for a good life? They said no. Actually, suffering is the opposite of a good life. Suffering comes when something's out of harmony. So people should emphasize trying to let their original harmony come out, their natural self come out, and revert to this kind of natural harmony. So this would have no suffering. Actually, it's very, very, very wonderful, very good, very happy.
One of the things also that I had um, thought about with suffering, and certainly, would you refresh my memory, Adam, about was it Socrates who said the to live a good life, hey, you have to have an examined life?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
More or
Because one of
less.
the things that it was a real breakthrough for me to understand, and this was a Buddhist idea about it was what the Buddha saw when he looked over the edge of the palace he was living in, and he saw old age and saw people um, dying. Um, but what Alan Watts was talking about was that suffering comes from desire, and that you get into sort of a interesting paradox about desiring not to desire. And the problem comes actually from the illusion of separateness, because the desire is to separate yourself from something. And that was a real breakthrough for me, because then I came to understand that if there's no separated individuality, then there's no suffering, because this is this body that calls itself Anthony is just what the universe is doing here. And um, for each of us is a resonant node in the holographic field, if you want to get uh, technical about it. But it was very useful for me to understand um, that there wasn't any separated me, so it's just what the cosmos is doing. What did you guys get into, Colette? And what did you come to any conclusions?
So it was pretty 50-50 by the end of the hour. Um, but so I was on the side of like that we have to have suffering in order to have a good life. And Haley, who's not here this time, but she was talking about how um, like if you're suffering, then when you come out of the suffering, then you appreciate the good moments even more
Oh
because you're
yeah.
like, well, at least it's not that bad, you know? Um, and I think, Andrew, were you on the other side, I think, right?
Yeah, I'm on the other side basically completely is that um I don't think suffering is necessary for a good life. And we were coming at it from many different angles. We were talking about both enjoyment and they were also talking about it wasn't the angle I was trying to talk about, but I believe you were talking about like the like ethics, like in terms of you have to have suffering to be a good person.
Mm.
Was that what you were saying? Or somebody was saying that, I believe. Might
Yeah,
not have been you. But do you remember that?
I do remember us talking about that. Um, yeah, that's a toughie because like if you haven't experienced real suffering, then like it's really difficult to feel for those people who are suffering and to be able to understand where they're coming from and really experience true empathy. So do with that what you will.
So you're saying that suffering is a part of the human condition.
Yeah.
Okay. And I
I
guess, go ahead.
I also thought somewhere along the same lines that sometimes it might be necessary to even see yourself become a better person. I really thought about this, and I really do think that working deliberately toward personal goals in life can feel like suffering in the moment, though I think to build meaning in life, there is an element of suffering that is needed for yourself to find it.
And say
Um,
suffering is
I really believe that.
you're working toward goals in life.
Yes,
Okay.
and I really do think that if you really work towards it, it can be derived from something that you invested a lot in to see yourself grow. There's one example that I have had where I've tried many work experiences. For instance, I wanted to go for after school, and some of which my search for a purposeful work experience that is meaningful for me spanned from first, I wanted to shadow in a real estate office to
Uh-huh.
practice an internship. Then another experience for building websites within another place. And it seemed to me that in those experiences, to really get a meaningful reward toward finding something, there's an element of grit for that meaning to really blossom from it. And you really get more of a meaningful reward by building your goals out and making your personal meanings and career grow greater than it was before. And those are some of the meanings of grit and self-growth that have really started to develop greater from my various experiences.
That's so interesting. That makes me think of like what you were saying, Professor Wright, is like when you were talking about desire, and like it's you can equate it to yearning. It's like if you don't have something to yearn for, then like you're almost missing out on the human condition. You're almost not living your life to the fullest if you don't have something to yearn for.
Hmm. What say you,
I
Ed?
think.
Yeah, so it's interesting also in Chinese philosophy, you should have a great goal, a great will. So often in Chinese history, they would ask the students, okay, beginning of school, maybe like even kindergarten, what's your great goal? And the students so many students would answer, I want to be a Confucius. That's the very high goal, very high goal. So yes, I agree that you should have a really high goal, and that's part of growth experience as a human being. I agree 100%. As far as the suffering goes, though, there's things that are out of your control, right? There's those things you have to learn how to maybe go with the flow, right? And take care of yourself, protect yourself, because true happiness, true freedom is all inside you, right? Your mind, your heart, your soul, that is where happiness always exists. You can't have happiness without that. Your happiness is within. So the better you're in touch with your mind and your heart and your soul, the more you can endure anything, even in a difficult situation, even if it's something out of your control that is stressful, you can't, it's giving you trouble, it's giving you suffering inside your mind. If your mind is very cultivated, you can still be happy. Yeah.
Because the Buddha said there is suffering in the Four Noble Truths. There is an end to suffering, and the end to suffering is the Eightfold Path. And I don't remember all eight of them, but uh, it's right action, right attitude, and I guess in complexity science terms, it would be um, a coherence or a resonance with whatever happens to be going on in the moment. And yet I do appreciate, Colette, what you're saying about in order to have empathy for someone else who is having difficulty, it's really important to have had some difficulty yourself. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think, Andrew?
Um, well, so where I disagree is uh, a lot of that conversation is framed around what our lives currently are and not, I think, what they could be. And so, I, as hopefully as most of human history has shown, people are generally trying to build a better future for the next generation. And so at some point, um, as long as we don't go extinct, and as long as that keeps holding, there will be, and I have no reason to believe we will go extinct, anytime soon. Um, then there will come a point where the amount of bad things it will reach an equilibrium. There will be like, yes, there will be sometimes bad parents that don't get caught. Um, and there will be some natural disasters that uh we just don't see coming. But we will reach a point where we have minimized suffering, and there will be a large majority of the planet that does not have suffering. I mean, in the sense that we have today. I mean, you just look at compared today to 300 years ago.
Right,
Just for modern medicine, for example. And
right,
so, but the reason we developed the modern medicine is because we didn't like the way that we were dying. We
right.
didn't like the way we were living either. And so the living is the experience of the suffering is going through stuff with scarlet fever and cholera, etc. And so clearly there is suffering that we want to engineer out of society. And why should we stop it at any point? Why do we have I remember one of the things we were talking about when we were on the grass talking about this is one of the things that came up was like ice cream flavors, like, well, I'll always, I don't have to, like, in order to have that perfect life, I don't have to have ice cream every day or whatever, but I'll always choose flavors I like. And people are saying, like, well, what if you always have your favorite flavor? You'll never know what bad ice cream is like. It was like, I don't need to have had bad ice cream to still like the ice cream that I like. So, why do I have to taste, like shoe flavored ice cream once in my life, in order
Right.
to know that I like chocolate? I don't have to. Um,
I'm thinking about all the jelly beans that Harry Potter was getting,
exactly.
you know. We have to take a short break. I want to end this particular section with a poem about anti-fragility. So it goes like this. Since my house burnt down, I now have a much better view of the rising moon. So we have to take a short break and we'll be right back. So stay tuned.